Hey everyone, so have you ever wondered if your body type, your physical build, actually says something about your personality? It's a really fascinating and, let's be honest, a pretty controversial idea that once took the world of psychology by storm. Today, we're digging into something called Kretschmer's typology.
So let's just get right to it. Do you think someone's body shape, whether they're tall and thin or maybe short and rounder, can actually predict what they're like as a person? I mean, it's kind of a wild thought, right? But it's a question that has fascinated people for over 100 years, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack. Okay, so where in the world did an idea like this even come from? Well, to answer that, we've got to travel back to the early 20th century and meet the psychiatrist who got this whole ball rolling. Right, so this is Ernst Kretschmer, a German psychiatrist. And what made his approach so different at the time was his method. See, he wasn't just, theorizing in an armchair somewhere. He was on the ground, in psychiatric hospitals, meticulously observing literally thousands of patients. He was convinced he could find a real, visible connection between a person's physical body and their inner mind. His work helped kickstart a whole field of study called constitutional psychology. And the core idea behind it is pretty simple but also really profound. What if the same biological blueprints that shape our bodies, our bones, our muscles, also shape our personalities? It's really one of the first big arguments for team nature in that classic nature versus nurture debate.
So, after all that observation, what did he come up with? Well, Kretschmer concluded that people generally fall into one of four body types, and he believed each one had its own distinct personality profile. So let's meet them.
First up, we have the Pyknic type. So picture someone with a softer, stockier, more rounded build. Kretschmer saw these folks as the life of the party, sociable, warm, super expressive. But he also noticed a flip side, a tendency for these big emotional swings, which he linked to a higher risk for what we would now call bipolar disorder.
Then you have the complete opposite, the Asthenic type. Think tall, thin, almost fragile looking. Kretschmer connected this body type to a much more introverted and serious personality, kind of like the deep thinkers, the philosophers. And the psychiatric link he proposed? A higher predisposition to schizophrenia.
Next up, the athletic type. This one's pretty much what it sounds like. Muscular, well-proportioned. In Kretschmer's view, these were kind of the ideal. He saw them as psychologically balanced, steady, and really resilient. In fact, he believed they had the lowest rates of any serious mental disorders.
And finally, what about all the people who didn't fit neatly into one of those three boxes? Well, Kretschmer had a category for them too, the dysplastic type. This was basically his catch-all for anyone with an irregular or mixed physique. And, maybe not so surprisingly, he described their personalities as being just as unpredictable.
But here's the thing, Kretschmer wasn't just trying to put people into four neat boxes. He thought these body types were pointing to something way deeper, a fundamental spectrum of human temperament.
He saw it as this long spectrum. On one end, you have what he called the cyclothymic temperament. Think expressive, social, emotionally up and down. And on the other end, the schizothymic, much more restrained, intellectual, and private. Kretschmer's big idea was that all of us exist somewhere along this line.
Okay, it all fits together pretty perfectly, right? Maybe, almost too perfectly. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. If this theory was so neat and tidy, why aren't we all learning about it in Psychology 101 today? Well, this is where the cracks really start to show.
Yeah, because for all its initial appeal, the theory had some major flaws that later scientists just couldn't ignore.
So here's pretty much where it all fell apart. First, when other scientists tried to replicate his findings, the link between body type and personality turned out to be incredibly weak if it was there at all. Second, it's just way too simple. I mean, can we really boil down all of human complexity into just four little boxes? Probably not. And finally, there's a really good chance Kretschmer was just seeing the cultural stereotypes of his time. He was kind of finding what he was already looking for.
But here's the twist. Even though the theory itself is, basically obsolete today, it wasn't a total dead end. Its legacy is actually way more important than you might think. When you get right down to it, Kretschmer's real contribution wasn't his answer, it was his question. He was one of the very first people to really push psychology to take biology seriously. He was championing this idea of getting out there and observing real people. And in a way, he was ahead of his time, just insisting that our minds and our bodies are deeply, deeply connected.
And this is the perfect way to look at the whole story. So, step one, Kretschmer asks this huge foundational question. Step two, science comes along and shows, hey, your answer is way too simple. But, and this is the important part, that criticism didn't kill the question. It just forced us to find better ways to answer it. Today, we're still chasing that same link between biology and personality, but now we're using these incredible tools of genetics and neuroscience to do it.
So, while Kretschmer's 4 types might belong to the history books, the essential question he dared to ask is more alive and kicking than ever. What secrets about who we really are still lie hidden in our very own biology? Well, science is getting closer to an answer every single day. Thanks for exploring all this with me.